Hello, everyone. I am going to be talking about Larry McCurdy's book, Lonesome Dove, as my primary text, and with the article Discourses of Frontier Violence and the Trauma of National Emergence in his quartet of the Lonesome Dove series by Deborah Madsen. Okay, so to start off, Larry McCurdy's Lonesome Dove is a very long novel, but it focuses on two ex-Texas Rangers that are known far and wide, especially on the frontier or the West. They been in Texas for quite some time, and it is Captain Call and Gus McCrae. And these two are kind of getting bored with their life, or Captain Cole is, because they've dealt with the renegades and the bandits, and they've won Texas for America. So they are going to head off on their journey to be the first cattle ranchers to take a herd and settle in Montana because one of their friends came back and told them how great it was. So the whole novel is their trip to Montana and how it impacts so many lives around them, and the violence that ensues and around these people. And it is a very good read, a very long read, but it is a great read. It does deal a lot with violence, which is what led to the article that I'm going to talk about today. And Deborah's article, the abstract of it, tells you a little bit more about how it mythologized the issues of gender and race and the national emergence that happens here, of how the U.S. is better and we want to civilize people, and just different things on that, and how mixed blood, which we've talked about blood before and how it's not really any different, but that's how they used to define being different races, was from a different blood, and how mixed blood people during this time were really not welcome anywhere, and just the violence of that. Looking at the article, there is a few lines that could be interpreted as the thesis. I did not put another one here. While I have focused my discussion upon one series of novels by a single author, Larry McMurtry's enormously popular Lonesome Dove novels, I hope to introduce the larger implication that we might reread the American frontier as a national trauma narrative, and the violence of the frontier history as a lingering wound in the national psyche. I thought that was pretty well forward, but to do this, I think that her real thesis, is the two that I have here. And this paragraph just brings out how she's going to explore the American exceptionalism and to mythologize this frontier violence, and how they continue to preserve the image of the frontier, how this multiculturalism comes together and made these mixed blood people, and where they don't belong anywhere because no one seems to want them, and that's what creates this violence in them. To talk a little bit about this author, Deborah, who wrote this, she has many other articles and has been published in books, and it's usually the ones I found were all about different cultures and the Indians and Chinese and how they're written in literature and how they're accepted and so on. Within her article, June Nanamas is explored, and the theory I found two different areas. The main one is not June's exact words, but it is paraphrased by Deborah, that her study has explored is distinctive of frontier experience, the relation between representative representations of captivity, violence, and a rhetoric of national emergence, which we now know as American exceptionalism, begins with the early colonial captivity of many other authors. And the sexual boundary was crossed by women who took or remained with, such as Indian husbands. A political boundary was crossed as well. The fate of the American generation and American submission on the frontier was at risk. So by having these so-called mixed bloods, it messed things up overall. And that was the theory that they went on of how these people were treated. And it was found mostly on the frontier, which we are talking about as the West. And so just an overview of the article altogether. Deborah goes over the racializing the violence and how the violent natures seem to come not only from the captain and Gus, but really from those of other races, and how it is depicted by even the women, and the women being taken captive, or different captivity and what it does to a person. There's one woman who's taken captive and she cannot speak. She has lost her voice from this traumatic event. And then it talks about the frontier as a liminal space and focusing on how these people just do not seem to fit anywhere. And to backtrack a little bit on the captivity, most of the violent people, or the people that take others captive in McCurtry's work, are of mixed blood, as we have talked about so far. And it goes over a little of their background and why they are known as these psychopaths people, because of their upbringing and not really belonging anywhere. And that leads them to be violent people and take others captive just for the fun of it. And then it goes into the frontier as the liminal space, where it's cultures coming together and clashing, and these worldviews, and you get so many different cultures together in this frontier, because everyone and no one wants to be there at the same time. And which leads the frontier to be this place where it's the legitimation through suffering. And that talks about the Western genre, which this initially did not fall into. This Western genre, which McCurtry's novels fall into, really focuses on the legitimacy of taking women as your wives, and how the sexual violence toward them is the idea of this legitimacy, and also how the taking of land, whether it was legitimate or not, and in the eyes of the different people on how it is legitimate to gain that property. And it goes over how Augustus and Call reflect on this frontier, and throughout the novels, how it is just the site of trauma, and how all these captivities and the psychopathic characters and the mixed bloods. It's a very interesting article, and the primary text, I would recommend it if you have not, and the movie is great as well. And once again, that novel was published in 1985, and the primary text I will link on Canvas. I hope you all have a great rest of your day or week, or whenever you watch this.